Nihar Mehta, Dr. Handa, Dr. G.P. Sai, and Dr. Rahul Chagaria, and our nurse Sujata, and right in the corner is not a ward boy, but it's myself. Okay. Now the aortic valves are two types. Our experience is largely what is known as the core valve, and the latest model of this core valve is known as Evolut R and Evolut Pro. By this time, 44 implantation, the transcatheter aortic valve have been achieved by me and my team. Apart from that, Kavi 1, Valvin valve, where there is a bioprosthetic valve pre-existing, and once we have done even a mitral valve, we will list another valve. Alright? It's very simple. What do we do in TEVR? Simple workshop, simple workup. What is a workup like? Usual biochemistry that we do. Patient has a conscious sedation, is not under general anesthesia, and the procedure may take about 45 to 60 minutes, and usual plan is to discharge the patient in 3 to 5 days. Alright? As I told you, basic blood test, CT aortogram, which is I think very, very pivotal, and that I will tell you a little bit about that. Coronary angiography, if you are doing a CT aortography, you can combine with the CT coronary angiography. 70% of the patients may not need angiography at all. CT angiography is fair enough, good enough. Alright? Okay, this is the CT scan. Let's go into the details. Since we are not suturing the valve is being deployed there at the site of annulus in the aorta without sutures. It's the radial strength of the valve structure, the valve frame, the radial strength, which will oppose itself firmly against the aortic root. And therefore, this is important that we know precisely the size of the annulus. Apart from that, this valve has a long frame. So therefore, we must also know what is the height of coronary arteries. If by chance, if you are not careful and the coronaries are low, then you may occlude coronary artery, and that can result into disaster, even a death on table. So coronary heights are important. Thirdly, we also want to know is there enough calcification, because some amount of calcium we need. You know, the average age of the Indian lifespan now is 68. Therefore, we are going to get cases of atherosclerotic coronary aortic stenosis, and therefore, the aortic stenosis, atherosclerotic variety, and therefore we'll have to deal with this problem more and more frequently, so we should be prepared with all the kinds of possible complications and avoid them. Okay, so this is about the CT. If you show you that the valve is tricuspid, like here it is in a tricuspid aortic valve, then we measure the annulus, we measure the coronary heights, so on and so forth. This is just for your information. You don't have to do it, you just simply have to be familiar with what I'm talking about. Femoral artery, yes. Commonest approach is through the femorals, and then in case if the femorals are not approachable, then we look for the alternate approach, and that could be subclavian on the left side or carotid on the left side, so on and so forth. Alright, here is the right femoral artery. This artery is punctured against the background of the hip joint, the ball of the femur, and against that, so that we have a proper hemostasis. We start with 6 French sheet, then go to the 9 French sheet, and then finally 14 French sheet, and we have a percutaneous sutures, so we don't have to have any surgical suturing of the puncture, which is as large as 14 to 16 French in size. So therefore that roughly comes to about 4.98, so 5.5 minimum artery is needed. Alright, now see here. We first of all have to cross the aortic valve. A stenotic aortic valve may have an eccentric opening, and therefore sometimes taking a catheter, usually a straight tip terminal wire. In this particular, it is an AR2 catheter, and you see that I am struggling to find the opening. And it keeps on, it takes sometimes as long as 30 seconds, and sometimes it might take as much as about half an hour. And sometimes there are certain other maneuvers which we might adapt, and there we are. We enter. On the left hand side, I have shown a cartoon, and this cartoon here shows you that I have a pigtail catheter position in the non-coronary sinus of the aorta, and also there is a pacing electrode. This is the pacing electrode. This is the pigtail catheter here, and this is the valve which is crossing. Let's go to the next slide. After crossing the valve, and then I change it to a strong valve, strong wire, and this wire is confida wire. Confida wire is a strong wire. Why we need a strong wire? That you will see how bulky the device is, and this balloon is inflated. Unfortunately, this balloon ruptured. Did you see that rupture of the balloon? I'll show it to you again. And therefore, we must use it is actually expanded by the inflation device, which is handheld, and we do not expand it with, and we do expansion with the hand only, and it ruptured with the balloon called Z-Med, which rarely ruptures. In this particular case, we did not have a desired balloon. Fine, very good. After crossing, this is the delivery catheter. This delivery catheter is housing the valve. We go across the ascending aorta, slowly but steadily, gentle pressure, and we then cross, and here in this side, in the carton which I have shown here, that you see that this is the capsule which is coming in here. From here, this is the, and then it crosses. Once you cross, then you make an injection and try to position the valve at a desired level. The operator knows where he wants to position, which will give you an adequate opening, adequate the valve deployment without producing aortic regurgitation. Alright, so here the valve is being opened up. Gradually the valve is being deployed, but we find that the implantation is a little bit deep, so that we want to recapture the valve. In this particular valve, which is an evolute valve, recapture is possible. Having recaptured the valve, we reposition the valve, and now the deployment is started. It's too deep, therefore we capture it. After recapturing, again we start deploying, and finally when we deploy, we make an injection, and we show that there should be very mild or no aortic regurgitation, as in this particular case. Some degree of aortic regurgitation will be here, but it will disappear tomorrow, the next day. Why? Because this is valve is a frame with nitinol. Nitinol expands and creates its own radial strand, and the nitinol expands over a period of time by the heat of the blood. And when you see the next day, you do not see echocardiographically that there is any aortic regurgitation. Maybe Dr. Nihar Mehta will show you a little more detail about this kind of a thing. And I can see here on the right hand side here that the coronaries are very well filled up. You see here once again. And both the coronaries are seen right and left. So I think here we can now complete the procedure. Now our data. Well, out of these 44 cases that we have done, vast majority of the patients were intermediate or high risk. And there were 12 patients in low risk. What does low risk mean? Surgically low risk. Whenever the risk is low, patients should be, formerly we were doing only those patients who were declared with either prohibitive risk, high risk or intermediate risk. Those were the kind of cases which were referred to the cardiologist for TAVI. But now, because the results are good, and therefore the low risk patient also, by a trial called NOTION trial, are also and can be offered TAVR procedure. Alright, then the varieties of TAVR, we have to do low flow, low gradient aortic stenosis. Don't worry about that term. Bicuspid aortic valve is present in Indian population in somewhat higher frequency, and we have to do that. And in each cases which bicuspid aortic valve does cause certain technicalities, certain problems, and they are associated with a large valve cast and so on and so forth. One case had received a bioprosthetic surgically an aortic valve, and they had to place another valve in that for severe aortic regurgitation, and that turned out to be very beneficial to the patient since the aortic regurgitation stopped completely. Alright, the most common approach is the femoral approach. 37 cases were done from the right femoral, and the left femoral 4 cases. So in 41 cases the approach is from either the right groin or the left groin. because this is the easiest standard associated a very high success rate. Two cases we had to do with transaxillary approach, and one I talked about that it had also a Lima-Rima Y graft, and yet the subclavian artery was done, and then we could achieve successfully the TAVR, the transcatheter aortic valve replacement. In one case it was a carotid. The venous approach for a mitral valve, that's quite okay. We will not talk detail about it, it's a little too complex. Here is the example of a subclavian approach. See, the wire is coming from the subclavian area, then we pass, and this was the first case in India, probably in the world, where the Lima-Rima Y graft were patent both, and yet we could achieve the successful TAVR, and this I think is rare. This is the carotid approach, first case in India, and this patient had no subclavian approach possible, no groin approach possible, so this was done. Right? The range of valve used is core valve was a basic valve, and then there was a progression in the quality of valve. There was R valve, and the commonest size is between 23 and 26 for our population, and we did that, and 93% was the procedural success. Paravalvular leak of a moderate nature was found in few cases, and there it is here. The complications, the paravalvular leak is a correctable complication. We can do a post-balloon dilatation, post-dilatation after deployment of the valve. And the most common abnormality which we find with this valve is a need for a pacemaker. And then there were conduction disturbances, but the permanent pacemaker was required only in 4 cases. 44 and 4 comes to be a very low figure, and by now we have learned how to avoid that also, and therefore the pacemaker requirement, which I don't think is a complication, but sometimes is a sequelae, and that we might have to do in less and less number of cases with the newer technique which we have adopted. And finally, the paravalvular leak. Moderate paravalvular leak is acceptable. Severe grade 3 paravalvular leak is associated. This at any cost should be avoided. And in case if there is a mild, then I think the prognosis is good. Moderate can be corrected, and that also be acceptable. Prognosis is good. Don't forget the aortic stenosis coming at a late age of 70 and whatnot is always, they are sick patients, and we are offering them not only the quality of life but even the survival benefits. And this major complications, I already told you the pacemaker is not a complication. Paravalvular leak, yes, significant paravalvular leak is associated with high mortality and shorter survival. Major groin complications were faced with in 2 patients, which is also very, very small. Death on table, no, 0. And finally, we can now do TAVR with our closed eyes, because my team's eyes are always open. And just look TAVR team, and I think with this we are only now concerned how to bring the cost down. Once the cost is reduced, and once the TAVR is within the reach of the middle class patient, I think this will turn out to be a boon, the procedure of choice for all the patients suffering from severe symptomatic atherosclerotic aortic stenosis. Thank you very much.